Welcome to the Unity Guides Expert Interview Series. My name is Clayton Stenson. I'll be your host today. This series is brought to you by Unity Guides Incorporated, where we help businesses develop Unity within. We help. Sorry, I'm gonna edit that out. Where we help develop Unity within companies running on the entrepreneurial operating system. We just do this through fractional integrator services and relationship coaching for the visionary and integrator. The reason I started this interview series is that I've met some pretty amazing people in recent years, and the conversations we've had have been valuable to me. So I thought I should share them with other people to add value to them as well. Today's guest is Kevin Rains. Kevin is an EOS implementer in Kentucky. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And today's topic is going to be around legacy and having a sense of calling or a higher purpose attached to what you do. So, Kevin, tell me a little bit about why you wanted to talk about that.
Well, I feel like I'm in that season of life right now of kind of thinking more about legacy. So I'm turning 55 this June, and I'm kind of in this season of life. I just sold 5 businesses that I owned for about 18 years, about 2 years ago, and that kind of kicked me into this transition. I decided to retire, and my current favorite designation is failed retiree, because my kids instantly said, "Hey, you got more gas in the tank and we want to work with you. So let's start some new things." So we launched a few new businesses, which set me on this track of like still having the opportunity and the just absolute joy of getting to mentor my kids in their early business journey. As well as now I have 2 grandchildren. So all those things kind of add up to this season of life and pointing forward toward looking at legacy and what I'm going to leave behind.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's what triggered me to reach out to you was the failed retiree thing. If I remember correctly, was like, oh, that's funny. So now you've got me thinking about kids. So my kids are 7, 5, and 3. That must be really cool to work with you. That's one of my dreams, is that at some point I would be able to, build a legacy like that with my kids and do something with them if they're interested. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what are you doing with your kids?
So my son, he's 27, and we've owned a piece of property in our family for almost 20 years now. And it's in the middle of Kentucky in a place called Red River Gorge. So we would go down there and just spend weekends and shovel gravel during their spring breaks, and it was kind of a place for our family to camp. We eventually bought a little trailer and a camper, put it on the property. Then we built a small yurt structure on one of the cliff edges on the property. Eventually that became a cabin, but we really never overly developed it. It was just for our family and kind of our tight inner circle friends. But once I sold my other businesses, which were auto body shops, we had 5 of those in this kind of Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky region. Once I sold those, we had some capital to work with. And my son approached me and said, "Hey, why don't we develop this property in Red River Gorge?" So we did. We have 10 rentable structures. They're all what people call nowadays glamp sites. So they're elevated up in the canopy on kind of stilts, and they're like permanent tents. And when you walk in, it's like you're walking into a 4 or 5-star hotel. It's beautifully appointed. My daughter did all the interior design. The cabin got a fresh upgrade. We brought utilities onto the property. We have hot showers and heaters and fireplaces in all the tents. So it just became this space that we're now using as a short-term rental opportunity. And we're just getting ready to pivot. I'm meeting with my kids midweek this week, as well as an investor in this business. And we're going to pivot everything towards becoming a retreat center. So that's our first business. The second one is coaching. So I launched these roundtables, and my daughter was my admin at the time, and she helped me get all those launched and going. I have 2 currently. I have a third one coming online, and there were 2 previously. So this will be my 5th roundtable just in the last 2 years. And she's kind of done all the pieces of putting that together, as well as she helped me kick off my EOS journey as well. So she's the one who's helping me on the back end. And if I look good, it's because of her. And if I don't, well, that's on me.
So tell me a little bit about what that's like. What's it like working with your kids, and
Yeah.
why is that something that you were so excited to come out of retirement for?
Well, it's something, I mean, like most parents' experiences, mine was not unusual. There was the teenage years that were a bit rocky for both of my older kids and my youngest, who's now in college. And I'll tell you about her in a second, because there's another enterprise that just launched.
Another one.
Well, we hope she takes this one over. She's being groomed for it. So yeah, normal kind of growing up, teenage up and down seasons. I didn't have any thought or hope that my kids would even want to be in business. But it turns out, even through those rocky years, we were finding ways to at least stay connected as possible with them. And then when these opportunities emerged, it just feels like I almost couldn't believe it. It felt like I hit the lottery in many ways. And part of it was, they wanted to work with me. They saw an opportunity to stay kind of with the family. But I was very intentional about telling them that I wanted to work with them, even through their teenage years, and telling them, like, no expectation. You may find a job in another city somewhere. We always want you to have freedom, spread your wings. And if there's ever an opportunity for us to work together, please know that Mom and I would be delighted if we had the chance to all be in business together and working together on a family enterprise, or enterprises, as the case may be. Yeah. So,
what's Mom's involvement?
It's interesting. She's really the one who sets the stage for everything. Meaning, I host all of my EOS and roundtable groups at my home. We have a ranch house near a lake. So it's a very peaceful setting, kind of a retreat for people to get away to. But she handles all the hospitality around that, making sure that the meals are here and the snacks are out and people are welcomed properly, as well as takes care of my daughter's two children, my two grandchildren. So she watches them so that my daughter can be more deeply engaged, mainly in the finance seat of all of our enterprises. So the daughter who helped me kick off my coaching journey also sits in the finance seat. We have some real estate, but for all the businesses, including a nonprofit. And that's the one I didn't mention. We just launched it. It's called 117, the 117 Foundation. And every month we give out grants to help people in the adoption process. So people who are kind of needing to get across the line of adoption, we help them get across that line and then help them tell their story so that we can kind of create a ripple effect around this idea of adopting children and bringing children into people's homes who have needs. So we're hoping that our youngest daughter, who was adopted when she was 4 years old, we're hoping that she'll kind of run point on that when she graduates from college. So that's where that stands.
What an amazing life. Like, I'm just being really honest with you. Like, I'm inspired by this. Like, I've got 3 little boys, and I'm trying to, build a strong relationship with them, so they'll come to me when they're struggling, or come to me and, be open and honest with me, and I can invest in them and support them in their journey. I'm trying to model entrepreneurship. And I don't know if I told you this last time, but I'm in Canada and it snowed one weekend, and the boys always want more money to go buy Lego, right? So I said, you want to go, guys, you want to go make some money? And we went to the neighbors, and I said, okay, I'll help you shovel, but you have to do all the talking, right? And the 7-year-old, he's like, yeah, I'll do it. So he went to the door, knocked on the door, and they came to the door, and he's like, can we shovel your driveway for money? And they're like, how much? And he said $1 each, and I was like, oh
no. Pricing is less than one
more. Right. They paid them $2 each though, so that was nice. They said, oh, we couldn't find any $1 coins, right? So we'll give you a $2 coin. Anyways, bit of a tangent, but I feel like you're 20 years ahead of me in your journey, almost exactly, right? And you're harvesting, what I'm trying to invest in now.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have? I'm curious a little bit. What advice do you have for me? Like, because I think about entrepreneurs and I think 60 to 80 hour weeks and family being neglected, and you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sound like, was there a season of that for you? I'm curious.
There probably was a season in my mid 30s where I was working probably too much. But again, having a wife that was able to ground our family through
Yeah.
her own hospitality, and her own just ability to make our home someplace special that the kids want it to be,
Yeah.
past tense, as well as want to be present tense. So,
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of things we did right. One was when we did retire, I bought this lake house. So I knew that was going to be a potential magnet to draw my kids back because they want to play in the lake and they want to be at this cool place. And we have a small golf course next to us and all the things, right? So there's golf carts and the grandchildren love to ride the golf carts. So we tried to kind of entice them through that kind of post-retirement purchase or first retirement purchase.
Yeah.
The other thing is I included my kids. The way that you described was beautiful, Clayton. I love how you described that. And you're getting them active. You're helping them talk to people about money and about business and about work. And I can't think of a better thing to do at this stage of their life than to get them kind of involved in some way. For me, that really took shape and kind of the aha went off. I mean, my son would work in the family business. Again, it was auto body repair. So he would wash cars and buff cars, and he learned how to sand cars and take the trash out and do the things that a 12, 13, 14-year-old young man would do, working kind of in the family business. But it really clicked for me when my daughter wanted to come into the business, and she didn't want to work in the shop. She didn't want to be around all that dust and kind of, in her mind, some of the guy stuff of working on cars. She wanted to work in the office. So I wasn't sure, like, if I had a place for her in the office, but I made a place for her to come into my office. And I taught her how to answer the phone, and I taught her how to greet people when they walked up. And this is when she was 15 years old. She was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to, her senior year, she was having some challenges socially in the local high school that she was at. And the high school agreed that she could do her final year of school via the computer. So she came to my shop every day and had her school computer on one side and then the body shop computer in front of her. And she would work on school until a customer came, and then she would shut that down. And then she would work with the customer, making sure they had all the intake done properly, make sure that an estimator got their attention and made sure that they were connected, did the handoff, and then she'd go back to school. Well, ultimately, by the time she was 17, she had graduated high school early, and she had written an operations manual for my entire office, start to finish, that I ended up at 17, that I ended up using for years. So I was hiring people in their late 20s, early 30s to help become estimators in my business. And she would do all the on-ramping work of getting them up to speed and explain to them, like, here's how we treat our customers. Here's how we talk to our customers. And there's some funny stories about where she took her authority a little bit too far. And one day she actually fired one of my technicians. She basically told him, you can't say that, or you can't do that in this shop. This is my dad's business and you're fired. And I had to gently explain to her when she was 16 that she did not have the authority to fire somebody and that I needed that person. But it was an interesting way for me to kind of, it dawned on me, like, she's taking this very seriously. She's seeing herself as an owner. That's exactly right. She saw herself as an owner because this is her dad's business, which means therefore it's her business as well. So she understood what it meant to be part of a family business at a very young age. So I think your model of, like, giving them the responsibility to talk to customers, to set the pricing, like, give them big jobs and stretch them. And I think they'll respond to that.
What just came to mind, like, we're talking about family, like our kids. Is it any different with other people? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you hired a young person that wasn't your kid, wouldn't the same things work? Right? It's like giving people a vision, giving them responsibility, challenging them, to do more maybe than they realize they can do? Like, would you say it's any different? Except maybe
Not,
there's more of a relationship and higher level of trust, probably, hopefully, with your
I think there's some nuances that are maybe a little bit different, but I would say, upwards of 80-90%. It's probably, if we were drawing Venn diagrams, like the overlap would be stronger than what didn't overlap. And I often think about that, even when I'm mentoring somebody, like, yes, I have my children who are my descendants, like physically, and then through adoption, that was another way that I have a descendant. But like, there's other ways to have descendants, right? There's other people that we're going to influence through our life, through our mentoring, through how we talk to them and treat them, through do we give them an opportunity to have their own break in some way? All those people are, in a sense, my descendants in a way, right? So it's not just confined to blood. That to me is really important, but it's not where it's confined. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I think my philosophy is that, I want to care for my people, right? Whether I'm there for 5 years or there for 5 months, right? Because sometimes I do fractional work and I'm only there for 6 to 12 months, right? I want to invest in, and care for my people as if they were my kids.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And obviously it's a little bit different, but one of my kind of core beliefs is that intent matters more than technique. So people, we really need people to sense the intent, the care, in the way that we approach them, because then they open up, right? Then, or they can just, if you can tell someone cares, it's a different conversation than if it's just they're trying to get you to do what they want you to do. Right.
That's right.
Yeah, that just kind of came to mind, and I've been kind of wrestling with that too, because I think sometimes in the past I've had people say, you're too nice. There's a difference between nice and kind. Right. And you can be too nice, but you also have to be kind enough to challenge. And I'm sure that conversation after you fired your staff member,
yes,
right, you had to be direct and nip it in the bud and be clear.
Absolutely. And I did. Like, it's like I had to be very highly challenging to her and explain to her the limits there. But in all honesty, like, my heart was bursting with pride for my daughter, who had like taken a huge risk and done something in the interest of the family to the best of her ability. So I tried to temper my comments with that understanding as well.
Yeah. That's great. So how does because I know you're a person of faith, as am I, how does your faith tie into all of this and legacy and for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really at the core of what I do, what I think about, and how I do it, how I frame it up. So I mean, I you and I have talked a little bit about my background, coming out of a ministry background and then pivoting into business when I was in my early 30s, kind of back into the family business in my early 30s. So I would say the biggest challenge is there for me, that it's not hard for me to think about how to integrate my faith or make that a major portion of kind of my whole worldview and how I approach life and business. I think the hardest thing for me to go through was early on when I left ministry to pursue business. There was a long season where it was like I felt completely out of sorts, and landed me in therapy and landed me in like long walks trying to ask God, like, what did I do wrong? Like, am I being demoted? Like, why would you push me into this weird business arena? I thought you had a calling on my life. And what I came to realize over time, it took a few years for me to kind of wrestle that dragon down, because I would, as a pastor, I would talk to people and say, your calling is just as important as mine. But deep down, I don't know if I really believe that. And that got really challenged when I was no longer professionally in the ministry. However, when I finally settled into like, okay, perhaps God has intentionally, even strategically, moved me into a different setting, and I embraced that, what I realized is my parish, my platform, my ability to influence people and systems within the city that I lived in, it went up tenfold, at least, maybe more than what I ever was able to reach or accomplish as a pastor. So I would say that I still, once I got through those rough waters, I then began to see my new kind of place in the marketplace as a very vital part of how God was calling me and wiring me. And when I really leaned into it and got super honest, I enjoyed business way more than I did ministry. Ministry was hard. It was hard to measure. Felt a lot of times we were dealing with some people who were, a rough neighborhood. There was addictions and abuse and all kinds of stuff. It often felt like 3 steps forward, 3.5 steps back. So just that whole thing of measuring and seeing progress. Whereas when I had a business, it was like, all right, my P&L says I either made money or lost money this month. How can I fix it if I lost money?
Right. That's interesting. Because I was pastor for 7 years too, and very similarly, there was kind of a culture shock season and kind of a mindset season. And I left the ministry after my first son died, and was dealing with some grief and a lot of things that were really messing with my head. But once I settled in to particularly this business, it's been 4 years. I find the impact is much greater as well than what I was having previously. So I'm just curious. So having that higher purpose, that calling, how does that help you get through the hard stuff day to day? You find that it's a big difference?
I do. In some ways, I feel like, again, I have nothing but love and respect for people who do not share my faith. So let me preface everything by saying that, like, this is not about, However, I do feel sometimes that, like, as someone who believes in God and believes in God is fully present in our lives, like literally everywhere present and fills everything that we do. Since I believe that, in many ways, it feels like I have an unfair advantage. So there's this sense of like, in the Christian tradition, there's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is called the Comforter, the Encourager, the Counselor. So I just feel like I have this built-in, anytime accessible person who knows everything, who has the treasures of wisdom, and all I have to do is ask. So if I ever feel stuck, for me, it's a quick, like, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. It's a moment to pray and to get unstuck through prayer. It doesn't always happen instantaneously, and I don't think God's about making my life as a Christian easier than the next person. That's not necessarily true either. We all have our own trials, tribulations, and challenges, and part of how he shapes us is to help. It makes us go through hard things because it makes us become stronger. So I don't want to give the impression that, like, I just say a prayer and everything's fixed.
Gone, right?
But but I do have like a resource that feels almost like an unfair advantage at times, because I never feel completely lost or alone, even when I'm in this entrepreneurial journey that could be lonely at times. It doesn't feel that way to me.
Yeah, that's good. I want to shift gears a little bit talk about another resource, which is EOS, because I don't know if I've really gotten into your EOS story too much, but how did EOS help you to manage your businesses and help you to stay connected at kind of to that higher purpose, right? Because I would imagine your core purpose, right, in EOS and that whole system probably helped you to stay connected more, I'm guessing. But tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so EOS for me was when I was running my businesses. Like I had the blessing and the pleasure of sharing a mentor with Gino Wickman, who started EOS and wrote the book Traction. So he's very close personal friends with Dan Sullivan, and Dan was also his business coach. And I went through Strategic Coach, which Dan Sullivan had started. So I got exposed to some of the concepts that formed the foundation of EOS long before even some of the books were written or the curriculum was completely finished or laid out. Wow. So through my relationship to Strategic Coach, I was learning about things that Gino gives Dan credit for, but he talks about them often in the EOS curriculum, like hitting the ceiling. That's a Dan Sullivan idea.
Yeah.
And starting our meetings with segues where we talk about good news, personal and professional.
Yeah. And unique
Dan,
ability too is Dan Sullivan too, isn't it?
Exactly. Unique ability and the positive focus of good news, personal and professional. All that was stuff that I was learning from Dan. So at some point when I was at Strategic Coach, Dan had put the book that had been published, Traction, on the shelf. He wanted to obviously promote people that were in his program. Picked up the book, read it, loved it, started to implement different aspects of it, different pieces of it. I call that my Frankenstein years because I was just like grabbing stuff from Traction, grabbing stuff from Strategic Coach, grabbing stuff from Pat Lencioni, like just Jim Collins, whoever I could get ideas from. And I just kind of pieced this thing together. So I ran my business with a lot of stuff from Traction as well as other places that diluted it, quite frankly. Then later in my journey, probably around year 15 of an 18-year journey, I decided to go all in just on EOS. There was an implementer in my area who had gotten certified, and he was a personal friend of mine. We bumped into each other at a conference. He told me what he was doing, and I was like, hey, look, I'm ready to go all in. So we did. And that kind of journey with EOS was what allowed me it really got my business tuned up. It helped me find my integrator. And within a couple of years, we started getting very attractive to private equity because it was time now. Like I wasn't overly involved, if at all, in the business. Mm-hmm. My integrator was running the day-to-day. I was managing simply the big relationships and the culture and the values stuff.
Yeah.
And he was taking care of pretty much everything else. So that became very attractive to private equity. So they made us an offer. I said, there's no way I'm going to sell. I saw their offer and I'm like, maybe I will sell. Decided to sell. It was a good offer. It allowed me a lot of freedom and cleaned up all the debt from our business, as well as left us a good chunk that we could work with. Yeah. So after that, it was like, that's when I retired. Then I got back into coaching, and the implementer who had kind of helped me tune my business up said, hey, I see you're doing a lot of coaching. Why don't you consider doing EOS? Mm. His name's John Herman, by the way.
Okay. Yeah.
And I told John, I said, John, I don't want to compete with you. Like, you're the guru, man. You helped me so much, and I don't want to dilute what you're doing. And he kind of chuckled. It was one of those moments of like, don't worry, we're not going to compete. You can do your own thing. I'll be doing mine. He's like, well, I'm sure we could pass referrals back and forth. I have plenty. He has a very full practice of, I think he's going to coach. He has on the books right now 150 sessions for this year, completely booked out to the end of the year. So it doesn't feel like competition in that sense. In fact, I get the benefit from some of his overflow. So through his invitation, I went to boot camp, started coaching, and here we are. I have 19 clients, and I love every minute of what I get to do with EOS. It's super fun.
That's awesome. Awesome. So I know we're coming closer to the end of our time. So just what I'd love you to just kind of share. I know you're in the works, working on a book. You've also written another book, I believe. So why don't you tell us a little bit about those resources and
I don't know exactly when it's going to come out, but the working title right now is Profits and Purpose. And the first chapter is called The Pastor's Pivot. So it picks up right where I was leaving the ministry and pivoting it back into the family business. And then I just kind of go through the whole life cycle of like the creation phase of a business and getting the vision, and then getting the processes in place and ordering our businesses with processes, and then kind of moving into the later stages of where the business is no longer like where I wasn't working for my business, but it was working for me. Mm-hmm. And then kind of the sale, and then the legacy after that. So it kind of goes through the full life cycle of kind of living in that space of like creating a business, the chaos that ensues after that, coming out of the chaos with sales, ordering everything, and then prospering towards the end. So that's the basic premise of the book, is the whole life cycle of the entrepreneur. And it kind of was really my way of detailing my journey over 18 years and trying to draw out principles that I could share with other people. My next book that I'm working on right now is all about facilitation, how to create those ahas and do leadership development and build community amongst leadership teams. So kind of what I'm doing with EOS and my roundtables, it's kind of that idea of how to facilitate that community and the ahas and leadership development in groups. I love working with groups more than just one-on-one. So it's about group coaching.
Yeah, that's great. I'll be buying that when it comes out. Both of them. Just curious. When I think about legacy, I think about you kind of, if you want to have clarity on your legacy, you kind of need to stop and think, right? Like what? Like for me, I'm thankful. When I became a Christian, I think I had this season where I really rethought my life, right? And kind of, where do I want to be? And I've had multiple seasons like that. I've kind of reinvented myself, I think 3 times since I became a Christian, where I stopped and I'm like, you know what? I don't know if this is the path I want to be on. So what advice do you have for people who are listening to this and going, I don't have clarity, on where I want to be? What advice would you have for someone like that?
Well, that's one of the things I talk about in the book, is this idea that like legacy doesn't just like magically pop up at the end of our career. It's something that we can begin to build into at any point. So literally, like, the best time to start thinking about your legacy is 5 years ago. The second best time to start thinking about your legacy is right now. So anybody can start where they are and begin to seed the ideas of legacy. So for me, it's kind of thinking through different domains of life, like what kind of spiritual legacy do I want to leave? What kind of person of faith do I want to become and help my descendants become, whether that's my children or other people that I'm mentoring, help them become. Then I think about my marriage and what do I want my kids to remember about how I treated their mother, and what kind of mission do I want to send or have our family on. So for us, we decided on that adoption foundation that we focused on as a family. So that's going to hopefully outlive. So anything that's going to really outlive us is really what we're talking about here. So I tend to think about, like, don't think about the end of your life as the end. Think about things that could literally outlive you. Like our kids are obviously a big part of our legacy, how we made people think and feel. For me, like kind of the mental domain, like I'm trying to not just think big thoughts, but trying to record those things and test those things. And that's why I'm writing books now, is because I want to codify the things that I learned so that it can outlive me. And hopefully my children and other people could benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
So physically, I don't know how we're going to leave I can't really leave a legacy physically. I'll be decomposing. So that's not really one I can leave. But if I want to live long and see my descendants flourish, then try to take care of my body. So there's things we can do that influence our legacy in all the different domains of our life, whether physical, relational, mental, spiritual.
I just have one quick thought before we wrap up here. I remember years ago when I was very new working at the church, and Julie, one of the people that worked there, she told me about this exercise to write your own eulogy. So like start with the end in mind and write, like, what do you want people to say at your funeral about you, and then work backwards and become that. And that was an interesting, kind of mind game sort of, to make yourself think about the legacy you're building and leaving, and what you want your kids to say about you, or whoever's going to be doing you, or whatever. So I would just encourage people, if they're on here and they're listening to this, and to stop and think. And I think it's great to have a coach or a group, like your roundtables, to be a part of, where you can have these like deeper conversations, because I think we tend to just get busy and run from one thing to the next without any kind of plan or intentionality, and that's not going to get us to a place of legacy. So, awesome, Kevin. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate this conversation. So if someone wants to learn more about you and what you do, how should they get in touch?
They could email me at kevin.rains, RAINS, at eosworldwide.com. I'm a big texter, so if they email me, I'll give them my cell phone number and probably move it to text or calls shortly after that. But that's a great starting point for me. So awesome. Thank you, Clayton.
Yeah, on behalf of our viewers, thank you for joining us today, and thanks for sharing your passion on legacy. And I'm sure it'll be impactful for people on the journey of business and life.
Thank you.
So thank you.